Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Josh? Sorry to push you back a little bit there.
Oh, that's quite all right. I'm glad we can still do this, and thank you very much for taking time to do this interview.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you for granting me the interview.
Oh, no problem at all, and it's great to be able to do it, and especially today of all days, with the release of the album actually coming out now, of Gods and Men from MaelstroM.
That's absolutely right, man. Maybe the fates just collided last week, unfortunately, and I got to apologize. But last week, I wound up with Thursday night. I wound up with a massive kidney stone attack, and it was just absolutely brutal. I was wandering around the house, screaming and crying and wandering in a circle, and my wife was just trying to, console me and rub my side and just help me to deal with it. But I don't know if you've ever experienced a kidney stone, but it is really bad. So, I mean, by the time I never actually got to sleep that night, and it just, unfortunately, that's what had happened, and I, wound up having to cancel on everybody on that Friday. So I'm glad that everybody was able to reschedule, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad that was able to pass, because I know those things are just horrendous to go through.
It has not passed. It is just
it's not
stuck. It's stuck in between the bladder and the kidney. It's just how it goes. But it doesn't hurt until it spasms. So here we are.
Well, with that said, I mean, I'm so glad you were able to take the time to do this and be able to celebrate this day with finally the release of this album. And it's great to be able to see a full length actually coming from MaelstroM here. I mean, being able to see all 70 minutes of this coming together.
You have, I mean, I'm glad you are saying that too. But you have, I guess you have some idea, but For Joey and I, this is a 32-year-long, dream and struggle that to say we actually, yes, have a full-length album out now is an amazing thing to say. I just couldn't go and put out another EP of these, somehow involved in these 10 songs. We've been working and retooling these 10 tracks for the better part of 32 years now. So here it is, finally presented to the world in one complete piece.
And the great thing about it is it feels like these songs were written just now. I mean, it feels like such a great contemporary sound to it.
God bless you. No, these the majority of these tracks. Well, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. Obviously, there's an aspect of it that's written just, not just now, but actually, nothing was written now. I mean, anything that has been rewritten was basically rewritten within the past, let's take it back about 12 years. But the root and the core of everything you're hearing, except for maybe 3 tracks, is rooted in what we did, back 32 years ago. So yeah, I mean, to hear that that you believe it to be fresh 3 decades later plus is possibly one of the best compliments that I can get, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad to be able to present that to you, because I mean, to my ears, it really does feel that way. I mean, the fact that not everything's in 4/4, you're able to blend these genres together and make it sound so natural, and being able to have a great story behind everything that's going on here within 3 acts. I really appreciate it when a band actually does care about releasing a full album, so you actually appreciate everything from start to finish. And you get that between all 10 tracks and all 3 acts.
Thank you so much, Josh. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna ask you something here. Do you happen to have the did you get unfortunately, we don't. We're still working out the merch end of it. You know what I'm saying? So we really don't have hard copy of much of anything yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was digitally delivered. Did you happen to get a lyric sheet?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. There is a PDF that I can get to you. It's downloadable off of our main website, which is just www.MaelstroM.online. It's not a .com. It's actually a .online. So the lyric sheet, anybody can download the lyric sheet. It's got all the artwork in it as well. Every piece of music has its own piece of accompanying artwork that drives the story. Basically, yes, it's done in 3 parts. But did you happen to notice that the album has a second title, you could say, like a subtitle.
I was wondering if there was something about that, because I mean, it feels like it does have something longer to it, but I wasn't entirely sure.
Yeah, it's called Of Gods and Men, and then subtitled an allegory in an abandoned art. A little bit of a tongue twister. And essentially, that's exactly what you were saying is exactly what that means. Basically, the allegory is the story itself. It's the fantasy tale that's being woven by the lyrics. The music, I have to say the music is very much, a concept as well, because it's very soundtrack driven. But the abandoned art aspect of it is, so you have the subtitle again is an allegory in an abandoned art, right? The abandoned art aspect of it is literally the art of writing a record, of writing an album, of writing a body of work, a compendium, a piece of work that's front to back, an actual piece of work, as opposed to, we got 14 tracks, these 9 sound good, let's toss them on there, and then now we got an album. That's not this at all. This is, kind of conceptual to the extreme in that respect. It is very much an album. It's, it's our Dark Side of the Moon, or, Operation Mindcrime, or, that sort of thing, our Tommy. It's very much that kind of piece for us. And the fact that you recognize it as being, a real album and something that should be, ideally appreciated front to back if somebody can. I mean, look, I get it. Everybody's got, so if you like a track here or there, you're going to want to listen to a track here or there. But the idea is just like when I was a kid, you go and you put an album on, you sit down either with headphones or with good speakers and you listen to it front to back and you take this in as an experiential piece. It is something to, ideally for me, my goal was to create, and Joey's goal was to create something that could be experienced, not just heard as a background filler. And then,
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much. I mean, the fact that you want to take the album and make it so important with the audio and visual aspects of it and being able to really complete that story. I mean, it's incredible to see, even with, 32 years in the making of being able to do this. I mean, the fact that it all culminated into being able to have this full release, this full package, to be able to represent every single thing about the album is such a great thing to see.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. One thing that also was awesome in this process was that I was able to incorporate the talents of a bunch of other friends, which I'm really, really happy about. Basically, what would you call it? I apologize. Unfortunately, I got at 6 o'clock. I'm going to have to push him back. I apologize for that. I was able to. There are 5 artists on this, all of which are friends of mine. There are 5 artists that actually did all of the different pieces of art. So we have my son, one of my son's godfathers, Chris Kalin, another friend of mine that I've worked with in the past, a guy named Kevin Hooker, Jan Yerland, who's done our covers in the past, did this cover, just outstanding, epic piece of material that he created. And Joey's niece is one of the artists. Myself is one of the artists. So I mean, and I'm actually looking to possibly get someone else to do one more piece that I'd like to finish off. But the idea was to really kind of get a bunch of people and then direct them so that it could be put and woven into a cohesive piece, even art-wise. So that But I was very happy that I was able to utilize some friends of mine to create the art, because I'm in the art field. That's what I do. I'm in commercial art, advertising. So pretty much everybody that I worked with was somebody that I've worked with in the past.
Oh, and with that, I mean, it's great to see so many people that are able to lend their talents along with you to be able to really visualize this album. And then, of course, on the recording side, I mean, being able to hear these tracks the way that they were meant to be heard, and just showcasing this whole story and having this released as a full package. Having it really released today. I mean, with everything that's going on in the world right now, I mean, how does it feel to you having an album released right now?
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely, incredibly thrilled. It's literally been, a 32-year, of peaks and valleys. I mean, and so to finally say, hey, here it is, I'm absolutely thrilled. Are you saying that, because everything that's going on in the world with respect to like what we're experiencing, COVID-19 and lockdown and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and just kind of the irony with that, just like being able to finally release that album and then seeing all this kind of pandemic going across the entire world as this album's being released.
That actually was, I'm not going to say part of the plan, because obviously I didn't know about the pandemic, but Joey and I had finished this thing off, all but one part of one song was finished off years ago, and it was just never it just never wound up being the right time. Either, funds, I didn't have the funds at the moment, he didn't have the funds at the moment, it just never, and it sat again, basically, and, I started, I got set up to work from home one day in March, like, I don't know, sometime around March 13th or 19th, 17th, something like that. Like March 17th, I think. I got set up to work from home. And I was talking with him, and I said, you know something, man? The entire world right now is faced with this situation. And I don't think we're ever going to be in a situation remotely like this. We're not a touring band, really. That's just, I'm pushing 50, he's pushing 50, it's just, that's not what we do. The whole thing was about making this recording, really, finally. And I said to him, look, I don't think there's ever going to be a better time to give this out to the world, basically, and to present this in a manner that, like, hey, here it is, there was, from I don't want to say a competition point of view, but, we can call it that, from a other band point of view. So many other releases got knocked back, got pushed, because so many of the labels basically said, okay, wait a second, we don't know when these bands can tour. So we got to push that album back, because they're not going to be touring anything that and all of their, obviously, the songs that they're going to be doing and the merch that they're going to be selling, and all of those things are driven towards the piece that, the album that they're touring to at that moment in time. So many of those things got pushed back at that moment. And I literally said to him, I was like, look, you know what? There might not ever be a better time in the whole history of ever to release this thing. We have actually a tactical advantage by the fact that we don't tour. And this is the only time in the entire world that I could say a band has an advantage by not being a touring act. So let's just give it to the world, man. Let's just finally do it. And she agreed, and we figured out the funds, even though both of us lost our jobs during this pandemic. And we went for it. And so far the response has been phenomenal. And I'll just give a little plug here to my buddy Munzie from Skateboard Marketing. He does our radio promotions, and this album came in third most added on both NACC and Metal Contraband in the country. And it's an independent release, So I guess it was a good time. It's a good time.
Yeah, and I really do love the fact that you had all these ideas in mind, all these thoughts that were going on, especially with not being a touring band and, worrying about being able to tour behind an album and just being able to release it. And I also see it from the other side of there's so much darkness and negativity that's going on in the world right now. And if you're able to take your mind off of that and being able to just enjoy an album from start to finish, since so many people are able to sit at home and just being able to really kick back and enjoy an album when they might not have had the time before, this is a great album to do that for. I mean, with the length, being able to really dive into the story, and just being able to hear some great metal, especially when you're a metalhead and when you're able to appreciate something new that you haven't heard before, and you're able to put on something like this. I think it's just a great way to be able to spend 70 minutes and really divulge yourself into some great music.
I really appreciate it, and honestly, that was the intent. I literally said, we just said to each other, it's like, this is the time, man. This is it. This is the time. The world needs something new. It needs something different, and even if New and Different was written 3 decades ago, so be it. And let's just do it, because there's, I think the world needs some serious escapism, and that's exactly what you just said. And I really appreciate it, because you get it. You get what we were trying to do. You're literally pulling that out from my head from 2 months ago. because that's exactly what it is. We just said, look, I think that the world really needs some escapism, and I think that our what we do is very good for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it just has this great fantasy feel behind it, and you're just able to escape this world and being able to just enjoy some great music, an amazing story from start to finish, and, so many great styles of music that are just blended together, and they just sound so incredible together, and just being able to hear something like that in 2020, being able to see all these different sides of what the band was and what the band is right now, again, it's great to see that in 2020.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And sincerely, that was the intent. I really, I was just, and also I really also appreciate, what you're saying as far as, blending of genres and stuff. And yes, that is absolutely true. For Joey and I, it was never really, especially as we started to become ourselves, I guess, as MaelstroM began to become its own, to become its own band, its own brand, its own identity, and have its own sound. We have influences, obviously. We were always kind of rooted. We grew up in the middle of the rise of the thrash era, basically. I got to see Rain and Blood 3 times on stage. I literally headbanged into Kerry King's Spikes. So. That was our youth. That was our, those were our influences. But we always had a tendency to lean more towards the European thrash side. Definitely the Creator, the Destruction, Celtic Frost, even early Canadian Voivod were bigger influences of ours. Certainly for me, Sabat from the UK was a huge influence. Creator was a huge influence of mine. And on Joey's end, very much the neoclassical players, the Yngwies, and also the guys like Jason Becker, and I forgive me because the guitar gods are not always my thing, so I may be missing a few names here and there, but. Bands like Cacophony, and like I said, I don't remember. Maybe you can help me. Jason Becker and his partner
Marty Friedman.
Marty Friedman, yeah, okay. So those were absolutely influences of his. Joey also studied classical guitar very intensely. Joey is a phenom and a rabid learner. He went on to he studied with some really great guys. I know he studied classical guitar at a place called Stecker and Horowitz School of Classical Guitar, and he got to the point where he used to lecture at Juilliard. So, we have a lot of neoclassical going on, as well as all of these other sort of influences that were varied. We listened to the thrash and the speed metal and death metal, and Joey loves Sabbath, so some doom style kind of stuff. So there's certainly all of those influences are in, and even some of the broader based power metal and traditional metal. I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan, a huge Bruce Dickinson fan. And even some of the earlier prog rock stuff, like I love John Wetton. So he's always, whenever I'm asked about an influence, John Wetton always winds up making it into my list. So basically, we never felt like it was necessary to, say, okay, well, we're a thrash band, so we need to stick to this, this bracket of stuff and this spectrum, and that's it. We don't waver out of that spectrum. We kind of coined the phrase for ourselves, cinemetal. And not in terms of cinnamon, but rather in terms of cinema or cinematic. It's very cinematic metal is what we try to do, and not always so much in what you might think in a pompous way of that extremely grandiose power metal that's totally symphonic, over the top kind of thing, but cinematic in the sense that we're taking you through a sonic landscape that we want you to envision something in your head and feel something in your heart and in your soul that you might take on when you were either reading a really good book or watching a really good movie. More and those seems to be, what people tend to relate those sort of experiences to, but we want you to try to feel that same thing when you're listening to our album. We want you to visualize what's happening. We want you to, get involved with the words, but not just the words in the story. The music drives all of that and drives with all of that as well. The way we write is very much like, okay, Joey, I need a march towards a war right now. I need something to sound like, a battle is about to happen. So he'll write a march or rip something from William Tell's overture. In a case like the second song, Army from Ash, I wanted it to sound very militant, drill sergeant-esque, and almost like a tank brigade, like coming down a hill, and a drill sergeant sitting there barking orders at somebody. And if you picture that in your head and listen to the song, I think it's fairly successful. In a song like Thief of Light, the idea is intense panic. Somebody is going through an anxiety attack because of what they're about to have to do. And if you listen to the music, it sounds like somebody is stumbling and running and falling and tripping and very, very nervous. And that's the idea.
Yeah, and I very much hear that. And again, that's why I appreciate the concept, making sure that you can really flesh out the story in all aspects, and making sure musically, lyrically, visually, everything is going along with it so well, and it really does match up that way. And I can only imagine that's what made it so hard to be able to decide to show off a track or two of the album beforehand, being able to show off a single from this album, because it's kind of just like taking a chapter from the story that's going on without the full details.
Yeah, I mean, I get exactly what you're saying, and there is a certain aspect of that. But ultimately, there's also the industry, and the industry says, what, we should put out an advanced single, and in that respect, the industry is definitely right. We want to create some interest, whet an appetite, that kind of thing. So, initially we had the idea to put out, and like I said, it's absolutely right. That is a good way to do it, because it does get interest, pique interest, and drive some people, further into wanting to hear more. So, although I would never really want somebody to just download two songs, let's say, off of this, I certainly want them to take it in as an album, because I know that plenty of people that they'll only get a couple of choice songs now, and to me that's just not the way to experience an album. But people will do what they want to do, and that's fine. But ultimately, as far as making the choices to put out which single and stuff like that, I mean, it was just something, honestly, Josh, that we just had to do. We chose the two songs that we did because they were a little bit shorter, a little more concise. The second one definitely has more. 13 Within a Circle definitely has more some interesting tricks that I guess that we kind of have gotten known to do. The Army from Ash is a little bit more straightforward, but it definitely has it has an interesting kind of acoustic break and stuff like that. But it definitely is a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more accessible than some of the other tracks on the album. Initially, the initial idea for what we were going to put out as the first single was going to be the Miracles, but that's like an 8.5-minute journey, and we just, ultimately that's not the right thing to lead with radio, or even as a lyric video or something like that, and it's just not. Miracles has pretty much everything in it that we do. It's sort of that is sort of the mixed bag song of everything that we do, and it'd be great to use that as the highlight, but ultimately, like I said, that's an 8.5-minute journey that just is not right for radio in that respect. If radio wants to play it, great, but not what we would want to lead with a single.
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense, and I'm glad to see that you did choose the two songs that you did, because I think they really show off the different sides of the band without giving everything away, and I think there's enough interest between both of those songs that I think it can really bring a lot of people in to wonder what MaelstroM really is all about between those two songs.
Well, that was definitely the intent. Thank you.
Oh, of course. So, with that in mind, I mean, obviously with the album coming out today and being able to celebrate that as much as you can given the world and, obviously dealing with a kidney stone right now, just thinking about the future, I mean, is there a future for MaelstroM? Like, do you have any ideas, like, going forward, or are you just thinking about the fact that this album has finally come out?
Ultimately, Joe... to sort of quote a Spinal Tap reference, Joey's like ice and I'm like fire. I guess, like Joey's very, very focused, extremely, can really lay down and do one thing. I have 11 to 13 things in my head at any one given point in time, and I try to do them all at once. So we play off of each other well like that. I would say right now the focus really is this album. I mean, it's been 32 years, Josh, so I got to give it its due. It only came out 18 hours ago, technically, So I got to give this its ultimate, what I feel it really deserves in terms of, trying to make sure everything is set up. I mean, we did a lot of, dotting I's and crossing T's with making sure that conceptually and musically and lyrically and visually the album was what we truly wanted and envisioned. And now that it's been given out to the universe and, and hopefully carries on a legacy of its own, we really now need to make sure that it gets in front of people. So right now the goal is to really just push this. I mean, we've milked 10 songs for 32 years. We might as well make sure that they're poured into a really nice goblet. On the broader sense, I would love to do some other things in the future. Shorter term future, I would love to maybe do another EP. Maybe 3 songs kind of thing, because I think that that's something that we could pull off without a lot of effort and money, let's say, especially while we're trying to back this as much as we possibly can. I wouldn't look for that anytime particularly soon, but and when I say an EP, I'm actually we have a couple of songs of covers that we would love to do, and they're kind of left of center sort of things, not necessarily like traditional, covers of something that makes sense. But for instance, when we were back in the late 80s and early 90s, and we were playing regularly, we used to do a cover version of Billy Joel's Pressure. I'd love to record that. We have a couple of other ideas for a few other tracks that I think would be really, really amazing, heavy, done heavily kind of things. I guess you could say something very similar to what was done with Sound of Silence. Was that Disturbed, I guess, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a brilliant job with it. Interestingly enough, Sound of Silence was something that I would have loved to have done, because I happen to really love Simon and Garfunkel. But Disturbed did it. I don't necessarily think it is going to get done much better. But basically, along those kinds of lines, I would love to do a couple of tracks and maybe put out an EP like that. Short of that, excuse me, we recently, we're still very much in touch with the older members of the band. And we still talk with John Coltai, who was our original drummer. He no longer plays at all. But we're also still very much in touch with Elliot and John Modell, Elliot Hoffman and John Modell. And you being the drummer guy, you might know the name Elliot Hoffman.
Oh, yes.
And John Modell, the guys from Car Bomb.
Mm-hmm.
What you might not know is that Elliot and John were the rhythm section of MaelstroM.
I did not know that.
Yeah, man, I played with Elliot for years. I played with John Modell for years, and Joey played in 2 bands with those guys, MaelstroM, and then the band that took over after MaelstroM broke up, basically Spooge, Spooge was essentially MaelstroM without me, but it went in a completely different direction, more like a Mr. Bungle sort of kind of thing, very, very funny and very, very odd kind of stuff. Incredible band, but ultimately it just it just never happened for them, which is really a shame. And there's a ton of other recorded stuff from Spooge that I would love to see them get out too. There's even some stuff I did voiceover on for them, and that was all done with a guy named Eric Jackson, who was their vocalist, and unfortunately Eric passed away a couple years ago. But and then John and Elliot wound up co-forming the band Car Bomb. But yeah, half of Car Bomb was the rhythm section of MaelstroM.
Oh, yeah, I never would have guessed that. I mean, it's amazing to see how that can work in the music world, and just like being able to go from one style into a completely different style, and just really being able to show off that you can do a variation of music if you want to be able to approach things that way.
Well, I mean, those 2 guys are incredible players, and Elliot is an absolute monster. I mean, it's just, but ultimately, they weren't the right fit for MaelstroM. You know what I'm saying? They are the perfect fit for Car Bomb, but and Modell was the right fit for Maelstrom for a very, very long time. But his tastes changed. He wanted to do much more intricate polyrhythmic kind of stuff, and that wasn't. And we even asked him when we were starting this up again, when Joey and I started this up again, we said, would you like to play bass with us again? And it just wasn't the right fit for him. And ultimately he made the right choice for us as well. And he's such a great guy, and I'm so happy to see how well they've done. And unfortunately, this COVID thing wrecked their tour in Europe. But anyway, what I was getting at is John Modell recently found an old rehearsal tape of ours from 1992, 91. And it basically has 6 songs, which is pretty much what we wrote after the second demo. So basically everything we wrote as MaelstroM after what you're hearing now, he's got a tape of, and I just heard it. So, I mean, basically, we definitely have the roots of a second album, on tape.
Oh yeah,
totally. So it does exist. And here again, we would take a majority of the stuff from the materials we were doing in the early '90s.
Yeah, and it's so cool to be able to see that you were able to hear that for the first time, being able to possibly be able to have the material to make a second album if everything goes that way. But just like you said, being able to celebrate the fact that this album is finally released now after all this time, and finally being able to visualize the fact that Of Gods and Men is finally available now for someone like me to be able to come out and appreciate and enjoy and promote, and fans around the world, newcomers to the band, being able to finally check this album out and see what it was about, and hopefully they enjoyed as much as I do, because I really love everything that's going on here. And with that, I really love the talk that we've been able to have. I know you got another interview after this, and I apologize for taking up a little extra time with that. But
no, that's fine, Josh. And
okay.
Please, feel free to friend me on Facebook, reach out anytime. Absolutely, would love to talk. There's a lot of little tidbits and little Easter eggs in this album that I'd be more than happy to talk to you about. You seem to be kind of into the detail that we put into it, so I mean, I'll put that out there. Please, feel free, like I said, to connect with me on Facebook, and if you want to talk about the album, I'm absolutely enamored to talk about that kind of thing. Somebody who's into it and appreciates it and wants to know a little bit more and delve a little deeper into the details that we put into this. And also, I'll say this: I just put together a Facebook group. We have obviously our Facebook page, but I just put together a Facebook group that any of your fans that are listening, yourself, or anything that are interested in what we're doing and would like to get a little bit deeper into what the band is doing, and get like first cracks at things like merch, or first cracks at even exclusive merch that's only for people in the group. It's called MaelstroM Stormbringers, and essentially it's a group made specifically for people who are fans of ours, and that could be 32-year-old fans, because there's still plenty of them out there, to brand new people, but people who just kind of are more interested in what we're doing and want a deeper, connection with it. It's basically a group, or a fan, it's fundamentally as a fan club. And but I mean, it's a group, so talking about anything metal and glorious and epic and stuff is very welcome. Any loincloth, driven giant maces and axes kind of stuff is very encouraged. So